Volkswagen haven't created a baby Audi RS-Q8. Instead, they've created this. This is the Touareg R, and it's essentially the 918 Spider of performance European SUVs. That's because this doesn't have a W12, it doesn't have a diesel V10, it now has this. This is now rocking a 3-litre single-turbo petrol V6, but here's the thing, it's paired up to an electric motor and it has a huge battery out back. So this is a plug-in hybrid, and this thing produces 340 kilowatts combined and 700 newton-meters of torque, making this the most powerful production Volkswagen ever. So how much is this thing? Volkswagen's asking about $129,990 before on-road costs, which means it does undercut the Porsche Cayenne e-Hybrid. And here are some of the features that you're getting for that money. The most impressive feature up front here are these IQ HD headlights, which have 19,000 pixels in them, meaning they're a bit more advanced than your standard LED headlight. They can do cool things like put lanes out on the road in front of you. They can also project different parts of the road and avoid dazzling other drivers. And they can even spot a pedestrian or cyclist on the side of the road by lighting them up a bit more so you don't hit them, which is pretty impressive. You've also got night vision on this thing. This is the top spec Touareg, and this is the only Touareg to get the night vision package you'd see on something like an Audi. This Touareg's rocking 22-inch Estoril wheels, which are the same designs you'll see on other R products, except they've been upsized here. Now you have 285 width tires on all four corners, so this has a big square tire setup as well. We've got upgraded brakes, and we also do have blue brake calipers. We've also got ourselves an R badge along the side. As you can see, we're in a VW Touareg R exclusive blue paint as well, which looks quite good. We have some blacked out accents here, and we also have some black roof rails. This thing has roof load sensors, which means it will adjust the suspension and also the stability controls according to how much weight you're putting up top, which is kind of cool. And you should also remember that this shares the same underpinnings as the Lamborghini Urus, Bentley Bentayga, the Audi Q8, and even the Porsche Cayenne. But something that's a little bit odd is that this misses out on the rear wheel steer and active sway bar options that less expensive Touaregs will get. But so I've been told that doesn't make a massive difference, especially when you've got a big battery pack adding more grip to the rear wheels. You get two fuel filler caps, but of course one is for electricity and the other one is for petrol. Now it's going to take you around 2 hours and 30 minutes from a Type 2 charger in your garage to charge up this battery to full. And when you're on the road, it should only take you around an hour of highway driving if you do want to charge that battery up while you're driving. But you should see it to last you for most of your road trip because it is a pretty sizable battery. Now the EV range is around 50 kilometers according to Volkswagen. We actually did a real world test with this on this drive and we got around 40 kilometers. So you can expect between 40 to 50 kilometers depending on your driving style. Now there's a tiny black accent here for the roof spoiler. Of course you get a rear wiper, there's an R badge, and now we get these new LED lights, and when you brake they actually flip the design, which is kind of cool. They also get black exhaust exits out the back to sort of make this thing look a bit more menacing compared to a normal Touareg. But here's the thing, this doesn't get a sports exhaust, so it's not that loud on the outside. There is a sound generator for low speed movements, which is to help alert people that this car is driving, and that sounds kind of cool. But to be honest, Touaregs have never had loud exhaust. That's more reserved for other cars in the Volkswagen group, where this car has always been more of a refined car, especially when it's had a W12, a V10, or even a diesel V8. This being a Touareg, it has a pretty big boot, and what else is cool is that Volkswagen will include both a Type 2 to Type 2 charging cable and a home charging cable with the Touareg R, which again is pretty good value considering even some EV-only manufacturers won't include that at all. You've also got an electronic cargo cover which slides up and down just like you'd see on an Audi, but the downside is with having a giant battery pack back here is that you lose a spare tire underneath here or any sort of extra storage. So that is the sacrifice in the back, but to be honest, it's not sacrificing a bunch of boot room, so that's a good thing. The Touareg R also gets soft closed doors, which is very luxurious. You get window blinds here in the back, you get 2 air vents for each seat, which is very nice. You've also got rear heated seats, your own climate controls because this has quad zone climate controls. The leather in the back feels really nice. We have a big spongy armrest, and it's a nice place to be in the back seats because as a 5'11" adult, I have plenty of knee room, plenty of feet room, and also decent amounts of headroom, even though we have this big glass roof. You have an area to charge down here, which gives you a 12-volt socket and 2 USB-C ports, which put out more power than they used to, so it's gonna be better for fast charging. And also the good thing about the Touareg is that because it's nice and wide, the middle seat isn't actually that bad, but you do have a giant transmission and exhaust tunnel, which isn't the best for feet room, but it's not too bad to share with people on a medium trip. You have a very nice silver start button here, which is very Audi-esque, and when you start this car up, it does play an Audi start sound every so often, which is a very nice sound, but yes, it reminds you that this has ties to more luxurious cars. The interior is lovely. There's stitching and leather everywhere. This car gets a different type of trim running across the dashboard, but the base Touareg gets real open pore wood, as well as the Elegance model, which I think is kind of nicer than this material here, but you do get ambient lighting running throughout here as well, and the leather R steering wheel is really special as well. These seats are the highest grade leather you get in the Touareg, which just feels really soft and luxurious, and you get blue piping and blue stitching and R logos in the headrest. You get a sizable glove box here, but it's not too deep. You get 2 USB-C ports in there, and you also get a wireless charger down here, and also another USB-C port and a 12-volt socket. So you're not short of places to charge. You've also got a giant 15-inch screen here for all your major car controls. My only major gripe here is that when you're playing Apple CarPlay and you want to adjust anything in this car, it will take away what's on the screen. Even something as small as changing and massaging seats. Yes, these seats are heated, ventilated, and have massaging functions. It just takes away anything on the screen, so it blacks it out while it tells you that you've turned on your heated seat, which is a bit annoying. But what you do have is these 2 dials here, which we've seen on previous generations of Touareg. One is for air suspension, which is pretty special, and you've also got yourself a drive mode matrix here. You've got a bunch of different drive modes. You've got an individual mode, but the most important mode is sport mode. And you can press this menu button here to quickly jump between E mode and hybrid mode, and also manage your battery, which is very useful because I like the fact they've still kept a bunch of physical buttons, like a physical volume knob, and you've also got quick controls to your hazards and of course your ESC controls, which is very nice, especially in a sporty car like this. We get some pretty not so special flappy paddles here, and that's pretty typical of Volkswagen, but the newer R cars, like the new Mark 8 Golf, get nice big paddles, but we don't get them here because this is a very sensible R car. And we get a 12-inch gauge cluster in front of us, which is somewhat customizable, but it's really easy to read, and it's got a really nice refresh rate and contrast as well, so it looks very luxurious. So this 2-screen setup works really well, and it's kind of a wow factor when you sit in here. But I will say, if you're not really convinced by this car, you have to touch and feel this interior to know that it is a step above other Volkswagens you've probably ever sat in. And the Touareg R is quick. It goes from 0 to 100 in 5.1 seconds. According to Volkswagen. This thing combined with an electric motor is seriously impressive, and I stand by the fact that this feels like the 918 Spider of the Volkswagen Touareg family. You've had W12s, you've had diesel V10s, but this is a brand new power plant for the Touareg family. This has already got a very powerful petrol V6 turbocharged engine under the hood, pushing 250 kilowatts, but when you add an electric motor and a big 17 kilowatt hour battery to this thing, you then get 340 kilowatts and 700 newton meters of torque. And yes, that means this is the most powerful production Volkswagen ever. We're rocking an 8-speed automatic transmission, which is relatively responsive, but it's nothing snappy like a DCT like you'll find in a Golf R. But that e-power you're getting from the electric motor is just so ridiculously responsive, and it's really quite fun to push through corners. This thing is built like a bank vault, so it sort of feels like one through corners. It's got a very square tire setup, so it just feels planted and grippy through corners, but it doesn't feel light on its feet, for example. So it's a very big luxury SUV that can hustle. But my only gripe with this power plant is that you lose that title of most powerful production Volkswagen ever, because the power that's generated by the electric motor is no longer available, so you lose 90 kilowatts. This is still a quick car even without the electric motor assistance, but if you want the most powerful production Volkswagen and you want to drive around with that all the time, you have to make sure that you're using the battery manager in here to keep your battery charged up. Good news is it only takes around an hour to fully charge that battery up when you're using the motor as a generator out at highway speeds. And then of course you can charge from home, and it takes around 2 hours and 30 minutes to charge from a Type 2 wall plug, which most of you will have if you're considering buying a Touareg R. Now the brakes have a nice soft feel to them, but all you want to do is just plant it in this thing So I've spent a lot of seat time in the current generation Porsche Cayenne, and this feels like a middle ground between a Cayenne S and also the Cayenne e-Hybrid. Now, an interesting fact is that the Cayenne e-Hybrid uses a similar setup here, but it gets more electric range, more power, but less torque. And torque's the thing you want when you want that mid-range acceleration like this. You've also got yourself a bit of turbo sounds, which are very vague to hear, and that's one of the complaints I would have about this car, is that for an R product, it's very, very subdued. It's a quiet achiever. It doesn't shout out the back of the exhaust. It doesn't have a roaring engine. Everything is dialed down. It's luxurious. It's a sensible, it's a very grown up R product. Now, Volkswagen says that's what they would want for the Touareg, because they've got other cars that do all the shouty, exciting stuff, where this is more of a top of the range, super powerful, super luxurious, and very traditional Volkswagen product. Because if you think about the V10 TDI and also the W12, those weren't ridiculously loud either. They were very quiet, subdued, and they were, again, quiet achievers. So that's exactly what the Touareg R is, and it's not changing the playbook by any means. But I still would have liked to have seen an option for like a sports exhaust, just to make that V6 sound a little bit more exciting. But at low speeds, you do have a sound actuator, so you do get a bit more of an exciting sound at low speeds, because it's a sound generator to let people know that you're sneaking by in a big 2-ton SUV, because this thing will be silent when you're driving at low speeds near pedestrians. But it also is meant to mimic a more sporty sounding engine too, so that's at least kind of cool. Now, the good news is that you can have your cake and eat it here. You can have all this power, and the average fuel consumption when you have your battery fully charged when you're driving this thing is around 3.3 litres per 100 Ks combined. And that's a pretty reasonable figure. So if you are driving like we've been driving today, which is quite fast, quite enthusiastically, you're looking at an average fuel consumption around 10 litres per 100 kilometers. So it does jump up quite a lot if you want to be in sport mode most of the time. The biggest thing here is that we have air suspension. It makes it for a very comfortable ride, even though we're riding on these huge 22-inch wheels. Now, I haven't had the opportunity to drive a Touareg with active sway bars or even the rear steer, but I've driven rear steer in Audi's cars and it works really well, and it's a bit of a shame we don't get it on the Touareg R. But perhaps the coolest feature here is that when you're not wanting to use all this power, you can just drive around on that electric power alone, and that's when you're getting around 40 to 50 kilometers of real world range, and that means you can do your daily commute mainly just on electric power, which is a very enticing proposition. And what this Touareg is basically an evolution of previous generations of Touareg, which had exciting motors. Sure, this doesn't have a V10, W12 or V8 anymore, but just like a 918 Spyder, it takes a smaller displacement motor and beefs it up with a bit of electricity, and that combined output is actually really exciting, and something that I would definitely encourage you to go and drive if you're skeptical in the slightest, because this thing is definitely a proper R car.